Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by 10th Man. Who else we got? Arwin, the Adam Meakin, John, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Greetings, everyone.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello, at work as usual.
You crack on with a bit of housekeeping?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Let's do it.
Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Nope.
Well, isn't the claim that there's a extrinsic tangent to an intrinsic tangent point that we can measure as a dip angle? I'm pretty sure there's a positive claim to that, isn't there?
Not mine, if it is.
Well, that's what the dip angle, like you're using a straight line to the horizon, you can just see it, and that's supposed to be the curve, or the straight line meets the tangent, or it meets the curve. So can't be refracted. That wouldn't make any sense.
Strange you should say that, because 20 straight months have been telling us that we wouldn't expect to see a straight line position geometric in nature unless it was a no Atmo day scenario. Is it no Atmo day?
No, that's only concerning light. When you look at it, you see it in a straight line. That's the new thing now.
Hey, crack villain.
Hey, you made it.
You have to take yourself off mute to talk. Make sure you put yourself back on after. No, no sound. We'll figure it out with crack villain, hopefully. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Gonna need an axis for that, I'd say, right?
What are you saying?
Saying you're going to need an R value, I think.
Well, ballers still like to say that we do experience Coriolis deviation, just under very specific conditions for some reason. I don't even know where they got that. Like, they have to build this careful approach, like, oh, you have to do something very specific, and then you have the Coriolis deviation, when in reality, every demonstration that concerns Coriolis kind of shows that, well, everything has to seem to deviate all the time as the actual moving thing is moving underneath. So, yeah, I don't know why they hold on to that.
Well, because they beg the question twice, and after they beg the question of an axis, then they beg the question of conservation of angular momentum on top of that. So they're jumping R twice to justify why they don't see it to begin with.
Nathan, I
Yeah,
posted
but they do say they see it, though. They do say it. It's just like, oh, only in this way do you see it. It's right here. Look carefully. It's over there.
Yeah,
Just
just
this
gonna
one
do
Coriolis deviation, but not all the other things, though.
a quick shout out to, I think it's called Caprica Soul. Hope I've said your name correctly. Quasi experiment 1 of 3. Experiment types in the scientific method. Observation as experiment. Is that true? Observation as experiment? No. That's a composition fallacy. So basically, you're taking part of the explanation for the scientific method and claiming that as the whole. So observation of a natural phenomena followed by systematic experimentation based on hypothesis would be the method. Observation is part of that, but observation of what? Certainly not a concrete noun, a phenomena. Thank you for the super chat, though. Hopefully, I've answered your question.
Nathan, I posted an article in Masturbate.
Okay, just give me 1 second.
We can
Sorted
hear
it
you.
out. Yeah, I know. I don't understand why it was off. It gave me no option to turn it on. Right, I'll shut up.
Well, observations, just looking at stuff, basically, right? Like, when is looking at stuff science now?
But it seems to be a very popular thing to do that.
I think it was Slick James Johnson that used to say observe and declare.
Yes, it was.
Because I think I was still a baller then. But I thought that made
Some of these guys
know,
are saying that you can just ask a question.
Yeah, that's because Science Buddy says that's the scientific method. Step 1, ask a question. But what am I going to have for dinner this evening doesn't really fall into the scientific method. Why is that happening in nature? That does. So ask a question is incomplete. Ask a question about why something occurred in nature, then you've got a scientific inquiry on your hands.
well, then they get mixed up on what's natural and what's not, and that makes it worse.
Well, so many of them have had to broaden the definition of science to justify their existence.
Well, justify their belief at the very least. I've got your slide up, 10th man.
Yeah, this is from a sailing, astrolabsailing.com. Cast your mind back to the post about celestial sphere, or have a quick refresher by clicking here now. For the purposes of celestial navigation, it is easier to think about the Earth being stationary and the sun and stars are revolving around us. What we want to find out is the coordinates of the sun's GP, geographic or ground position, i.e. the point on the Earth directly below the sun at the particular point in time. Remember that declination is the celestial scale for altitude or degrees north or south of the equator. So it's interesting that in order to do any kind of navigating, we have to assume, I want to talk about that word, that the Earth is stationary. Why do we have to assume the Earth is stationary when we should have Earth-based Coriolis because it's rotating?
Because it is stationary and we don't observe the Coriolis effect that they claim we will.
Precisely. So how did we get here? Well, Eratosthenes assumed we lived on a sphere, first assumption. Then he assumed that sunbeams were coming in parallel, second assumption. Because to explain the shadow 500 miles away, he couldn't just accept the fact that you live on the plane and it's the angle of the sun from that GP of the sun to that obelisk or the pole in Alexandria, casting the shadow. Much like in the afternoon, as the sun is lower on the horizon or closer to the horizon, you see long shadows cast by the trees. So he assumed we lived on a sphere. Then he assumed sunbeams were coming in parallel, which we have proof that we have divergent sunbeams. So none of those things are happening. And yet, those two assumptions have them believing that we live on a ball that's rotating. And then when it comes to navigating this so-called ball that's rotating, we got to go back and assume it's not a sphere. It's stationary.
Another shout out to Caprica Soul, who says, what is the definition of natural experiment / quasi-experiment? It's part of the method. Well, no. The method hasn't got a natural experiment part to it. Natural phenomena is what you'll study. Now, an experiment normally is going to be constructed by a man. There's nothing natural about the experiment. What you're studying is a natural phenomena. So I don't really know. Quasi-experiment? Yeah. There's only one method. It studies natural phenomena. Hope that helps. Thank you very much for the super chat, though. Really appreciate the support. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Hey, before we go on to that, I wanted to ask Tenth if it in the article he read about Eratosthenes, were there Greeks barking refraction at him when he tried to assume the light rays were parallel?
Not to my knowledge, although someone is telling the story about this person, whether real or not real, and there's so many different versions of the story as well. Nathan, before we move on, you should see 2 more slides coming on. Let me know when they're on, please.
Yep, got parallel sun rays.
Okay, so the first one, you'll see parallel sun rays on a flat plane. The second one, you'll see parallel sun rays on a curved surface. And you can see to the left, Alexandria, shadow, Syene, no shadow. Go back to the first one, where it's on the flat plane. Shadow, no shadow. See, what they're trying to say is, hey, we see a shadow in Alexandria when the sun is GP is over Syene. But look, on the flat plane, how can that work? So when they go to the second picture and they curved the Earth, oh, that's why the shadow's there, because it's the Earth curving is causing the shadow. What a pile of whatever. This is so interesting that they assume on the flat plane sun beams are parallel, when all of us have seen divergent sunbeams.
There isn't any in the picture beforehand, but there we go. Yeah, do you know Plato's allegory of the cave?
Yeah.
Well, it's with shadows, isn't it? People are being deceived in the cave by flickering lights on the wall from a fire by their controllers. And the idea of the allegory is about the people who escape into the real world, come back, and then try and convince the people who are being convinced by shadows. Yeah, but they don't win. They're unsuccessful. They can't convince those people. You know, it's very comparable to our scenario. You know, our anti-flat Earth people are the people trapped in the cave, watching their NASA videos. Then when they see things like this, they're telling you, sun comes in parallel, the light comes in parallel. Now, you've got to be in a cave looking at a cartoon to believe that. You've got to be looking at these pictures in the books to believe that. Because you've only got to look out your window to know it's not the case. There's got to be a bit of cloud in the sky and you can see that they don't do this. But the books say it does, right? So it does? No. You're just in a cave being deceived by shadows. Speaking of
That
shadows,
is kind of
and the
funny
sun,
that Plato.
any evidence of the distance to the sun? Did you have something else to add? Feel free, John. It doesn't matter that I've asked the next housekeeping question if you wanted to tag something on.
I was just going to say that is kind of funny that they use he used shadows in that analogy for how they were tricking them.
Indeed. There's lots of parallels in lots of alternative conspiracy truth realms that would use Plato's allegory of the cave. And, you know, I think, without being boastful, ours is the closest. because we've got the anti-flat earthers trapped in the cave. In other words, there's still the majority of people normal out at surface level, that the escapees, that'll be us. Right? All right, there's a big flat plane outside this cave, inside of which I'm watching people go into a sky vacuum and various other things flickering on the wall. In my case, most literally, I'll use a projector. But if I'm sat here all day, we talked about this in the pre-show, right? Going, you don't understand. Send. And then I'm going to go and watch a SpaceX launch. You know, number one, you're not enjoying much of life. You're trapped in a cave. But we said, why would we? And I said, I don't. Although I run a show on it, so I'm a total hypocrite. Why would I want to convert those people back in the cave? Once you're out on the surface level in the allegory of the cave, what compels you to go back down into the cave? I mean, I understand there's going to be plenty of people who say, well, my loved ones are still in the cave, and I don't want them in the cave. Like, yeah, but do your loved ones love the cave? Because you might be causing them more heartache trying to pull them out of it. Because they love those flickering lights, don't they? Right? Well, you know what's topside, and you've told them, and they've rejected it once. Just accept it, right? Get on with being topside, seeing the real world, breathing the fresh air, get out of the smoky cave a bit more often.
Well, I thought that was important too. Like if they're right, like, which they're not, but even in their minds, if they're right, they're the worst people that's ever walked the face of their ball. If they're wrong, they're just acting publicly like morons. Like, that's the only two options they have.
Shout out to Skeptic936, who says, parallel sun rays equals no umbra and penumbra. Right on. And that's a problem for heliocentrism. Indeed it is. Right, they've got a contradiction that Skeptic936 is highlighting. That is to say that when they describe how an eclipse works, it doesn't jive with their parallel light rays anymore. Suddenly they're converging to cause penumbra and umbra. And you're like, oh, right. So it's just pick and choose in a Muppet Vision diagram what the light rays are going to do. I see. Well, of course. These are just pictures. You know, you're never going to get perspective side profile with you looking at the sun and its light travelling to Earth as a sphere in a sky vacuum. You will never achieve that perspective. Number one, because sky isn't a vacuum. We'd all be dead. We'd have no gas pressure. It would have dissipated into that availability of volume and wouldn't be pressing on us anymore. Like, as people, we wouldn't be experiencing the gas pressure that's pressing on us right now if the sky was a vacuum. So, further to that imaginary area akin to Narnia they call space, outer space, a sky vacuum that isn't real, the pictures are depicting parallelized lights travelling from a sun inside profile. So you're seeing the sun and Earth and light travelling to it with a heliocentric moon between the two, and converging light rays. Shout out, very much appreciate the support, Skeptic936. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth? Heard someone hissing.
Well, that was just me feeling a little bit sick as you said it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for filling us in on that. Crack villain. First thing you say on the Discord, G+ channel. First words on the show as a proper, regular, full-on guest is, I feel a bit sick. Well, that'll go down in history. Show 1500, by the way. Happy days. Don't normally mention the show number, if ever. But 1500, woohoo! Nobody gives a shit, do they? You bastards. I hate all of you. Not the audience. I love you guys. Smash the super chat.
Yeah, please do. Smash the super chat.
Any evidence, scientific evidence, of gravity? As I'm assuming no molten iron core evidence is going to be forthcoming. Am I correct?
Yeah, I'm still laughing about that one.
It's kind of like we have to just sit in silence with the housekeeping, because we know there is never going to be any more evidence. It's all bullshit.
You can easily, for 90% of them, just say you'll need half of that. That tends to keep the ball rolling.
Nice pun.
Oh, another super chat from Skeptic936. Scientific evidence of what? Indeed, yes. The current housekeeping question. Good timing with your super chat. Thank you very much for the support. Scientific evidence of what? Precisely what the hell is gravity? Number one, they've got an out-of-date 107, almost 100, is it 106 or 107? Is it 1916? When was it? I forget when Einstein superseded Newton.
1915. 1915, I thought.
1915. So it's coming up for 107 years. Is that right? Currently 106. Yeah, 107 years almost. Out of date. I mean, it's stinking up the place good and proper right now because people still talk about, in name only, Newtonian gravity. And what the hell are you babbling about? You've got your bending pseudo-Riemannian four space-time conceptual medium. It's not mass attracting mass anymore. That's so out of date. But the whole purpose of it being in existence in name only or otherwise is to keep people on a spinning ball. So it's like, well, yeah, it is mass attracting mass, but it isn't in your maths anymore. It's been superseded. Yeah, but we still need that concept because otherwise people wouldn't really buy the idea of having people antipodal from their position on a sphere because they'd fly off it or fall off it. So you've got to have something pulling them to the centre of it, and that's going to be bendy space-time that we'll describe as mass attracting mass when convenient. You're like, so what the hell is gravity again? Exactly. Thanks for the super chat, Skeptic936. Really appreciate all the support.
And, you know, like when they do that, and they say the center of M1 is drawn to the center of M2, you know, that they don't realize how damaging their rebuttal to the black swan was by invalidating their claimed measurement. You know, that everything is built on that.
Hold on. Did you say
So
centre of M? Centre of M1? What would that be measured as a what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for?
Maybe a radius.
Oh, that's the
radius,
one. So that completely balls that up then, doesn't it? Where'd you get the radius? Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
No, I don't.
What was that? Muttering? Neil, go ahead.
Kind of sounded like Kermit the Frog said, nope.
He just said no. Well, another super chat. 1,500 shows. Yes. Congratulations, says Skeptic936. Indeed, he do. As I say, I don't normally mention the show numbers, but I'd say 1,500 is pretty good going, isn't it? Shows how long I've been doing this show. See me progressively aging if you flick back through them and go through the intros. Looking handsome at the beginning. Wow.
I even looked at that myself, Nathan. I was like, I went back to one of your really old shows and I was like, wow, he's been doing this a while. He really has. I was like, wow. Not that you'd aged too badly, but you know.
Yeah, I have. I don't mind. It's 2 kids. Worth it.
1,500 shows.
Did you just say kids?
1,500.
As if you were the one to carry them.
Yeah, you can almost mark it in the timeline when I start looking a bit more haggard. That's when the first kid came along, and then when I start looking really haggard is when the second one came.
Nathan, 1,500 shows. You're going to need R for that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what's kept the show with as much longevity as it's got, right? We wouldn't be making 1,500 shows about this subject if you could just close the door on it, i.e. flat Earth. If it was just, well, the reverse is true, right? We're shutting the door on globe faith daily. That's how it is. That's the only reason a flat Earth show can have any longevity. Because it's 100%. Not the case that we're being closed down. It's just strawman arguments that we have to highlight. We have to battle through the swamp of the misrepresentations of what we are as flat earthers apparently supposed to believe. Well, yeah, we can address those things and point out the logical fallacies and then set to the more interesting work of ripping apart the current paradigm in the Western world, which is that we live on a sphere. It's absolutely absurd and we can shut the door on that daily. We wouldn't be here if we couldn't, because we'd have had the door shut on us and we'd feel stupid. You know, I've got a reasonable amount of
100%.
pride also. I'd feel dead stupid if the door had been closed on flat Earth. It hasn't. It's being
100%.
confirmed.
It has been.
Today's the
confirmed.
1500 show,
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
and I was late. Oh my gosh.
Don't worry, I was late too, and this was my first day on the show, Neil.
Jeez.
So I've beaten you, and the first words that I said was that made me feel sick. So don't worry, I've got you beat.
I'm here before anybody every day, and today I'm late.
It's
Yeah, your
completely
phone's
arbitrary.
getting docked.
The fact that I've put numbers next to it, it could have had a hash and then a letter. It means nothing. You know, the fact that it's just a lot is what I find significant. Yes, you can joke about how I've aged over the years, but ultimately speaking, it's still the case that we aren't having the door shut in our faces and made to look ridiculous. That only occurs when people hold up the controlled up narrative positions that are fed to them. And unfortunately for you, if that's the position, like it was with me when I first got here, and it was for most people, that's your own ignorance. But, you know, recognising that is a doorway to often more ignorance. I was going to say enlightenment. Total lie.
But that's what I always say, Nathan, is that if we're infinitesimally small, we're meaningless, we are not a threat to the globe, then how is it that there are so many anti-flat earthers and still they are making videos to apparently rebut that which what we not say? Obviously, they're not rebutting what we say, but at the same time, there's a continual feed toward trying to distract away from what we are saying. So if we are infinitesimally small, we're meaningless, and we're inconsequential, effectively, to the globe and its defeatance, then, well, what are we still doing here? You know, the globe really didn't stand the test of time. They would have you believe it's been thousands of years, in fact, that the globe has sort of been the the mainstream. And you can really find it if you look into it, you know, going back 150 years where it was taught in schools. The globe hasn't stood the test of time. And people say, where are the whistleblowers? Well, I know people from NASA personally that actually have whistleblowed on this themselves, too, in fact, that they themselves believe the Earth to be flat. They work for NASA. And then they say, where are the whistleblowers? Hello, guys, we're right here. We are here. There are 1,500 episodes on this show alone, right? I personally involved in a live stream daily, and it has longevity. And it wouldn't have longevity, and we wouldn't have these people strawmanning us continually still to this day if we were inconsequential and insignificant and not a threat. That in and of itself proves the lie that they say is a lie.
Well, it's an argument from silence fallacy to say where are the whistleblowers anyway.
It is an
That's
argument
true.
from silence fallacy, that's correct. But ultimately, I think that is why, you know, for now, perceived as a threat. Yeah, I think that goes without saying that the requirement for suppression, despite us arguing the other day about it being a potential valve being opened rather than closed, if you get my drift. I don't want to detail it because I will segue onto that vein rather than the fact that we're being suppressed means that we need to be suppressed. Tends to be the case that if you look at it in the most simplistic terms, rather than looking for the deeper meaning in truth, it's like, no, suppression is required, so suppression is applied. Just look at it like that and go, okay, well, why? You know, why is that necessary? Well, you're probably right, because it's a threat to the calm nature of society that we have currently, and, you know, disturbing the apple cart isn't necessarily what's good for society, especially if you're in control of it. So maybe that's why we've had to be suppressed. But it doesn't change the fact that we're out there. We, when I say we, it's the colloquial flat earth we, the recognition of the nature of world not being a sphere, being a flat plane, by the way we navigate, etc., etc. But that recognition, I don't necessarily care about, other than I want to be a successful YouTuber. You know, getting a better penetration in the mind's eye of the Western world that we are on a flat plane. As I said in the pre-show, half the time people want to brace against it and they like the cave. So it's like, have your cave then. I don't want to take that away from you. Good for you. Stay in the cave.
Well, it's almost better that they have that attitude for me, because the idea of being someone's guru is nauseating. I hate that idea.
Yeah, me too. Like, don't ask me. I don't know. Oh, you want to laugh that I don't know? Well, I'm not laughing at you because you believe something I know that isn't true. In most cases, I pity you for it. I'll tell you that because you'll probably see it as some sort of weakness, but it's true. But no, I don't want to be your guru. You know, when you're like, well, how does the world have an edge? Where's the dome? Where's the ice wall? Blah, 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 blah. I don't know. What's the moon? What's the sun? How far is it? I don't know. I ask those questions myself because I want to know the answer. I mean, I ask the farcical questions about molten iron cores because I know it's preposterous.
The molten iron core one, it really is preposterous as well. It genuinely is the most. That's why that one makes me feel sick, and it makes me gag because obviously the mere suggestion of it, if you understand where that starts from, that doesn't start from any form of anything even slightly. Not it doesn't even come from like at least sticks and shadows. Do you know what I mean? Like it didn't even come from sticks and shadows type level of stupidity. It literally came out of the mind of a man who had written 11 million words on alchemy and I believe died to poisoning himself with mercury. That's all ignored when we talk about Newton. And you know, it was genuinely just a thought that he had. He hypothesized 3 main layers to the Earth, and then you know, the field of you know, geology and the field of seismology just ran with it eventually because he was on this pedestal. That's all it is, and that's why it makes me feel sick because it's like something that he had in a sick, deluded dream, and because he was on this pedestal, they were like, "Okay, sweet, let's run with that." You know, he's a great man. He's given us great knowledge, but again, like I said, they ignored the main bulk of his work, which I believe is 99% of his work, which would be the alchemy work that he did, and they called him crazy for that at the time as well. So that's why it makes me feel sick.
I didn't expect that as the conclusion, but great. Shout out to Mike808 who sent me a super chat saying, congratulations on 1,500 shows. Wow, thank you very much indeed. I really do appreciate the support. It's been a tough month in all seriousness. But yeah, thank you very much for the super chat.
That explains why on your first show you said you were sick. It was that question.
It was that question. It was.
Any evidence we can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon? This is what I'd hope for on show 1500, like maximum enthusiasm level from both Discord
I'm
and
just
G+.
waiting for.
Struggling to
I'm just
control the
waiting.
buttons.
Silence is good because we know what we're going to say, and we're just waiting to see if there's any defender of the globe that's going to come on and offer anything, and they haven't for months and months. So,
Can you get some Jeopardy music and play it after each housekeeping question, just so that in that time only Globers can give responses? Like give them like 5 seconds to respond, like to start talking, just to see if they do it.
For me, it'd be Countdown. I don't know if you have that show over there.
Countdown would be better, yeah. That would be our equivalent, right, Nathan?
I'm not sure.
Oh, it'd be nice if we could actually get the lady as well.
That's what we have. That's Countdown. It's over 30
Okay.
seconds and just raises in pitch over the course of 30 seconds while they're guessing a word scramble or whatever. Hey, Brian.
Yes, Brian. So I say hello to Brian and he leaves. Okay. Thanks, Brian.
What you talking about? It's what you did 3 times. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Crack. Hey, everyone. I pressed the camera off button, then I pressed the hang up button. Instead of pressing both times, I tried to press the mute button. So that's why I disappeared. Happy 1500, Nathan.
Indeed. Thanks. Yeah, brilliant stuff. Did we do all the housekeeping questions?
I believe so. I'm glad that I've joined today as well. It's a little bit, I'd say, poetic that I've joined on my first show on the 1500th show. That's yeah, I like that.
Shout out to Are You Smarter Than a Flat Earther channel, which is Spurs Chemo's channel. So I was faffing around trying to improve my audio quality at God knows what o'clock in the morning, and up popped Spurs Chemo versus Conspiracy Cats. So check it out if you want to hear that discussion, which centered largely upon how can we have gas pressure pressing on a man, or the equivalent argument of pressing on a barometer, when you haven't got a container around that particular vicinity. That was Katz's argument. It's like, without the container, there can be no pressure, end quote, Conspiracy Cats. There wouldn't be any pressure to be pressing on a barometer if the sky was a vacuum. It'd have all dissipated.
Yeah, you have no inward vector, sir. You have no inward vector, sir.
Yeah, they'd just dissipate into space and never return to press on your barometer or on you. We'd all be dead if there wasn't containment. It's an antecedent consequent thing. You can't measure the pressure inside the container if you haven't got a container, because the gas is just going to fill the volume. So how do I measure this pressure? What pressure? You haven't got a container in fantasy sphere world. Now, that doesn't invalidate the fact that we have pressure. It doesn't mean that you can quiz us on a delta of gas pressure. It just means that we've got containment. It's a requirement. And that invalidates space.
Yeah, we don't need to provide the source of the containment. It's just logically follows, or should I say it just follows factually, so that if we have pressure, we have an inward vector, then thus there is a container.
Not necessarily an antecedent relationship, because you could argue, Weasley though it is, I hate pulling flaws in people's arguments when they're on my side. Right? So as the gas escapes, let's say you've got a massive, I don't know what you call it, geyser of gas, whatever, a vent that opens up in the ground. Now, at this stage, we have got a vacuum at sea level. So it's just expanding out. Now, as one of those gas particles expands out, it happens to breach at a higher velocity than a gas particle that's left ahead of it for whatever reason. Yeah? And it collides with that on its way up. What's it going to do when it collides with one of its own gas particles that it's escaping with?
It's going to create a form of pressure, of course. It's going to create a form of pressure, yes.
But it's going to come down. It's going to bounce off the gas that's around it.
Just slow it down?
No, it'll just bounce off it. Now,
but what happens if we stop the valve? If we stop the inlet, right? Then it equilibrises eventually, right? So
yeah, entropy will take hold. It will dissipate. In other words, if that gas particle that I'm describing, I'm being so easily. Don't think that I'm describing something that makes gas go down, go boom, boom. It just means that if it collides with something, it's just going to bounce off it and go in the other direction. Now, on the whole, in this scenario, it's just flooding out of the ground in my hypothetical example. Now, regardless of that happening for a very short period of time, like a fraction of a second, it's still just going to disperse into whatever volume it's got. And what you're saying is, in that hypothetical exact same scenario, which was why I picked it, when it eventually does dissipate, to be heading back down towards the ground, it's got to have hit something and be coming back down, right? So I understand the principle of why you've expressed it in that way. But there's just weasel room in there that I immediately saw as soon as you said it. Sorry.
Well, no, you're right to do so as well, because at this point where we're this far along inside of the argument, we should actually expand it into the Weasley, because therefore, obviously, we can cover every single basis, because actually, the last argument given to me for gas pressure without a container was somebody talking of a glass tube with a continued pressure increase into the tube. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But the point there is what? That you have a continued releasing of the valve that would create continued collision, that would create a bouncing down effect for you to have an inward vector. But that isn't the same as what we have here on Earth, where it's non-analogous, correct? So again, it's a straw man to my position, right? Which my position would be, you have no inward vector, sir, right? Okay. So yeah, I understand why you did that,
Is that a
because
pun?
people do use that as an argument.
Is that a pun? Straw man?
But
It's equivalent to a
hold on
plate,
a
isn't
sec.
it? They've got a plate that they've got gas not escaping from. They've got a ground layer, an aspect for their gas pressure, the ground, right? Whereas they're saying, well, if I put it in a straw... No, I take it wasn't a pun. No worries, we like puns here.
No,
Well, we
it was.
didn't, but-
You could take it that way.
Yeah, but the inward vector, the claim of weight, that's 107 years out of date. That's using Newtonian gravity, so they shouldn't be arguing that point. That's
Of course they should.
been debunked.
You
They
sure it
should.
doesn't go to the centre of M1 then? What would that be, a radius? Oh yeah, they'd need a radius. Their M1 centre is Earth, isn't it? Oh yeah, radius
Oh
required.
yeah, you need a R.
You're getting it.
Well, right, but even if you beg the question of R, and you're using the argument that gas has weight, you're still arguing within Newtonian mechanics for that, because you know it's the Earth rising up. Like the gas has no downward vector. It's the Earth rising up in Einsteinian, creating the microstates. So it's not weight. What the hell are they talking about?
Well, what they're doing by bringing in the G in any way, especially with the gravity as a force thing, is what they're actually saying is we're claiming PV equals N or G, because they're replacing the T with the G, because they're taking away the other thing that like they're claiming a vacuum, right, outside of us, which requires a container. Then they're taking away T, which is temperature, which also requires a container. And then they're denying the temperature manipulates. Like outside of gas being contained, the only manipulation you can give to gas then, once it's in the gas form, the gaseous form, is with temperature. So they're denying temperature will manipulate the gas pressure we have, giving us a gas pressure gradient. They're completely denying that. But there is, as I put in my presentation, there is some other factors in it that cause the gradient, but the temperature is the main thing. Because you take temperature away, no matter what you do, you won't have a gradient.
Yeah, what I'm saying about their downward vector to the center presupposed spherical Earth is that is a Newtonian claim, and Einstein superseded that. So, like, even if you debunk that position, it's not the position they should be holding anyway. Like, what do they think they're doing?
You've probably got, although he's not, Sleeping Warrior going, yeah, exactly. You got to get them commit to the current nonsense of their science and their rhetoric, and relinquish the old and busted.
No, I totally agree, John. And obviously with Nathan too, but I totally agree. They have to see that when it comes to gas, they have to. With Einsteinian, it's up and out the way, right? That causes the pressure. So the globe Earth is causing gas pressure by pushing up the way through gas, right? That would basically be, well, that's basically it, yeah. But how can a globe, that's why you have to bring in the relativity math for a globe to be pushing up the way in all directions all the time. Because basically that means the globe is pushing out constantly on the gas. That would mean the globe would be constantly getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So they have to bring in the relativity maths, which is nonsense for that. It just doesn't work, because what they don't understand is when Einstein took all the Newtonian view of things and threw that out the window, what he came up with then completely ignored gas behavior, because he wasn't claiming gas behavior. He never claimed that to do with gas behavior. He never tried to give gas weight or anything like that, because he knew that wasn't possible. But
quick shout out to obviously Sarah Says, who says congrats, and the Earth is obviously, observably and measurably flat. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Really do appreciate the support. Sorry to interrupt your flow, Brian. Also, while I've got the mic, California Nightmare, somebody's put you on server mute. I'll just see if I can get your attention so you can join back into the conversation if you can put yourself on mute. if you've got a load of noise, I'm just going to server mute you again. Can you hear us, California? No, might end up on server mute again. No response. Still got his mic wide open, or her. Feel free to continue, Brian. I'm sorry to break up the flow.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't know.
No,
I'll mute
it's
myself
okay.
now.
That's fine. Did you have anything you wanted to add? If not, he's popped himself on mute, so fine. Marvellous. Everything's back in order. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Brian? Sorry, again.
No, no hassles. No, I know you have to do what you have to do. Not a whole lot other than they need gas to have weight to create to have any claim towards a gas pressure gradient in gas pressure. They need it to have weight.
Well, what is weight anyway, Brian? What is weight? I mean,
well,
I put myself on a scale. What is it?
Well, it's your weight within that medium, isn't it, Neil? If you put the scales in a swimming pool, you stand on it, then that's your weight within the medium of water. You know, but I mean, gas can't go down in gas. So weight is a downward vector. So they can't weigh air in air. Air doesn't have any specific weight in air. They have to contain the air and weigh the container with the air and the container without the air. That's the only way they can weigh air, because the container will have a downward vector. But they need something that has a downward vector in air to weigh anything. You know what I mean? So weight is only a convention, like.
Got it.
Well, as I understood it when I was on the other side, the Einsteinian mechanics was an inertial vector, and that the bending space-time is what kept everything at the forefront of that vector, and
John,
that the microstates were being created towards the surface because of that vector.
John,
That's
I disagree with you. I disagree. You said when you were on the other side. Call it like it is. When you were on the dark side.
Anti-flat Earth, the dark side.
You don't know the power of the dark side. I must obey my master.
Well, that was when I thought I was measuring a sphere, you know? Like, I thought I was measuring something. It's easy place to end up if you ain't careful.
So
So your master was the measurement.
We're not the
Because you
dark
could
side,
always
then.
measure, right? No, we're not.
You can be Chewbacca, Neil.
What was that?
You can be Chewbacca.
Did you say he can chew tobacco?
No, he can be Chewbacca.
I thought you said you can chew tobacco.
No, we're figuring out which character would be in the Flat Earth version of Star Wars, obviously. Try and keep up.
It's early in the morning. I just woke at the moment.
Can I be the bad CGI singer in the third movie?
You mean in the remastered third movie?
Yes, that one. The one that kind of ruined that whole.
Oh, that guy that sings in the cantina?
Yeah. I want to be that guy because he completely just ruined that whole setup. I think it was better before, I believe.
Okay, then. Star Wars doesn't come up very often on the show, does it? Matrix, quite frequently. Star Wars, not so much. I noticed...
Well, it's because I was more of a Trekkie.
Fair enough, me too.
That's an earful.
I noticed Jaron had made a video about Kubrick. Talking about the connections from lenses that Kubrick had got to NASA. Barry Lyndon was filmed under very low light and he needed a very specialist lens. This is Stanley Kubrick. And NASA are on the cutting edge of, wait for it, Cinematography. You thought I was going to say space travel, didn't you? No. Cinematography. So that's where he went to get his really top quality lenses to film Barry Lyndon in very, very low light. Candlelight, basically. Not at all studio based. But to get his realism, he wanted those lenses and he got them from NASA. And then from what I've gleaned, and this is what's explained on Jeronism's little clip video that he's taken from one of his shows and shortened, they had their hand in Kubrick's pocket throughout his production of 2001: A Space Odyssey. And they went into details about how Kubrick had dropped a lot of subtle hints about perspective in terms of the way he's making the movie and how he's shooting it. I mean, if you watch Rob Ager, I like his analysis of films better than anybody's. I think he's an exceptionally good film analyst. Is that right? Analyst, that's the one. But yeah, check out Rob Ager when he analyses 2001. He pulls apart certain intentional, both cinematography errors and, if you want to call them that, continuity errors that would be so blatant to any filmmaker of any competency that they can only be intentional. But those sorts of details are in the movie and subtle, like the direction of travel when he's on the treadmill, and he's running around that sort of circular shaped space station. How that's traveling to your position and how he's running on it not only changes direction in terms of which way he's running, like physically, like the thing's moving in the opposite direction, it also changes its orientation from left to right and direction of travel as they flick between the camera shots. Now, unless someone like Rob Ager pointed that out, I would never notice stuff like that in a Kubrick movie. I know how layered they are, but, you can only take in so much when you're actually engrossed in the movie. And most of it is, like Rob Ager points out, surface level stuff that you take in when you're just engrossed in the narrative or the plot. So it does take a good analyst to sort of highlight some of the things that Kubrick does. And also someone like Jaron to go through, who he was connected with at the time, and potentially why he was connected with it. Yeah, some of it's speculation, but a lot of it is actually documented in history. It isn't an unknown thing that Barry Lyndon was filmed with NASA lenses. So there you go. Check it all out. There was me thinking that Kubrick discussion would spark a really insightful conversation from my panel, but clearly not.
Well, I was just thinking.
Maybe in 2001 it would.
Maybe, yeah, 20 years ago.
So they get paid $53 million a day to be on the cutting edge of cinematography.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Another opportunity to shout out Dilly Gill, who also does a lot of expose on NASA, does a lot of freedom of information requests. If you like that particular aspect of Jaron's work, you'll definitely like Dilly Gill, because he's like that plus some. So, check out Dilly Gill. But yeah, I'm using his descriptions for the most part, Dilly Gill's descriptions, because they're accurate in terms of what NASA do. They're playing their cards very, very close to their chest in terms of how they fake space. But Dilly Gill will break down how they do the various different camera angles in what they call a live feed, and they've got a certain interaction level on set. That would be the high wire trapeze artist style set with a lower angle that you can't see the ceiling on the space station, and then they have a higher resolution camera that they can tart up in post and then release to the public after the fact. He'll go through all of the details how it's done and show that it's two different camera angles that are right on top of each other, just subtly changed so that one has got the ceiling in and one hasn't. So that when they're doing it quasi-live with very, very, very thin trapeze, the wires are super thin, and it's presented to a quote-unquote live audience on a CRT monitor that's 20, 30 feet away from their seating position in a studio, and the hosts, who are close enough to the TV monitor to potentially catch them out, have got their backs to it. So the setup of the studio is as follows. At the front of the stage, if you want to call it that, is a TV, relatively small. And then in front of the TV, with their backs to the TV, you've got two presenters. And then 30 feet away from that, you've got audience watching what they think is a broadcast from space. Now, when compared with the post-production tarted up version of the live broadcast that's given much, much later down the line, There's a ceiling that shows them floating. There's no way to fake you with wires because there's a ceiling, right? Well, no, that's been put in post-production. And what the audience was presented in the studio on a screen at 30-foot distance was a lower angle in what Dilly Gill used to call, although he started to modify his language, and I hope he changes back, he used to call it crapo-vision. The audience gets low def, fuzzy as all hell, crapo-vision. That's what they get. So that they don't notice that it's completely fake. They're on bloody high wire. Now, anybody on our side, this is laughable. I'm smiling because I know that there's no point in me trying to stress this, because it's either bloody obvious, which it is to me, laughably so, or it isn't. You know, it's one of those things that I struggle to wrap my head around explaining NASA to people, because if I ever attempt it, all you end up doing is finding they reach one extreme or the other really quickly. Yeah, it's really obviously fake. Yeah, I see what you mean now. They're on high wire. Or, this is an outrage. How dare you? Why would they? Why would they spend all this money? What a stream of questions because they're rebelling against it. It's like, no, either you get it or you don't. If you can't see that they're faking you, you want to believe the magic trick. You know, your disbelief's been fully suspended, and that's it. You want it to remain suspended. I can't do anything about that. If you can't see it, you're blind.
Well, what John said a few minutes ago there about how they're spending 50-odd million a day on cinematography, that's technically not true anymore, because they don't need that anymore. They have loads and loads of CGI and loads of belief. They've got the belief in mass within the public. I use the word mass on purpose. And now they can now, right, show you something where astronauts are claimed to be in space, and they're not in space. They're either in a swimming pool or whatever. And if something goes wrong, they can always claim, sorry, that was the wrong footage. That was our training footage. You know, that's where they're at. And people will accept that. Whereas I don't think people would have accepted that as easy at one time. But now they just accept that. Oh, they just put the wrong footage up. Or they can, if there happens to be bubbles, they can claim, oh, that's our training footage. That's not the actual footage. If there's an accident, we showed the wrong footage.
What you're looking for is Stockholm syndrome. So they've fallen in love with their captors. They're making excuses for their captors. That's what that is. Stockholm syndrome.
But it took time to get to that. To get to the point where they could make a mistake, where someone in the public says, how come there's bubbles in space, or whatever, and they can say, oh, sorry, that was the wrong footage we used that time. That was our training footage. And then people go, oh, okay, then that makes total sense. But whereas they would have got away with that maybe back in the 60s and 70s, but they get away with it now.
Indeed, they do. But with that, I am going to say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as an Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. If you are a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, then there are several members-only videos that are going to stay that way for at least the next week. So check those out if you're a member, or become a Nathan Oakley 1980 member to check those out. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Once again, stay tuned if you are watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!